Hey everyone, welcome to the Anything Everything podcast with me, Tarek, and my co-host, Sami. Sami, how's it going?
All good, Tarek. Afternoon.
All right, so today's topic is really a light one, but I think it's going to be really cool to talk about. It's aliens.
Okay.
And specifically, we're talking about like extraterrestrials, extraterrestrial life.
Yeah.
That's how we would define aliens. What do you think about aliens?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing comes to mind is, are we alone in the universe? Right?
Yeah.
That's the major question. Why are we here? Are we alone? And can we find out, who's out there, what's out there? And the term alien for us just means something that's not originated on planet Earth, right?
Right.
So that's how we define it. So anything that's just a bit unknown, we call it an alien. So it's really interesting to see, what's happened, at least maybe a bit historically, what incidents have happened, and led us to go down that rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's part of like Hollywood and a lot of films and TV shows. That aspect, people love that idea. And there's obviously the scientific community and exploration of space. So I think we'll get into that as well.
Yeah. There are lots of movies and things in pop culture that allude to aliens. I mean, you could see the popularity of like Star Wars and other science fiction series and movies, Star Trek and other smaller ones, but also super popular. So people love to think about aliens.
Yeah.
And like if you think of the scale of the universe, if you sit back and think of how big the universe is, and you're like, we're one planet, with like orbiting a single star, there has to be some other planet somewhere that also has intelligent life, and usually we like to kind of make them grander in our heads. Like when we think of intelligent life, we think of aliens that have much, much better technology than us and can like cut through space, get from point A to point B very quickly through a wormhole or something.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to this, it's maybe one of the only topics that when we think of ourselves, we actually diminish our capabilities, because usually we're a bit like, at least on Earth, we're full of it, right? We're the dominant species. But when it comes to outside of Earth, we kind of go like, I hope there's something better out there. And there's that joke that aliens are orbiting us. And then they say, okay, I don't see any intelligent life here. So
we're gonna bounce.
Yeah, because look what these guys do to each
signs of
other.
intelligent life here.
That's the one, right? Because we're bickering and fighting amongst each other. So they're kind of like, you know what, let's come back when it's a bit better.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like if we do find aliens, right now we have animosity between different races. We're all humans, but like one race or a religious sect is super prideful, and they have animosity towards another race or another religious sect, and there's wars and there's tensions between countries among the same species.
Yeah.
So imagine among aliens, like, are we just going to say, hey, what's up? Come have a cup of coffee? Like, is that going to happen? Or do we even reciprocate and think aliens would do that? Like if aliens come by towards Earth, are they going to be all friendly? Like, hey, what's up? Wow, you guys look pretty interesting.
I don't know, because...
Or are they just going to evaporate us and eat us? Because the same way we see cows as tasty meat, and we like the difference between our intelligence and a cow's intelligence, maybe that's what the aliens look at us like. We're just edible bio-organic matter.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
A form of energy.
Yeah.
That for them. And if they've been monitoring us for, I don't know, thousands of years, either they're going to go like, okay, we're going to welcome them through warfare, because that seems to be the consistent theme of humanity, or they're just waiting for the right time where they think we're at our weakest. So,
but if they could reach us from outer space, we're already weak compared to them, right?
Probably, yeah.
Like they'd probably have some giant laser beam that could just eviscerate our planet. The Death Star shit.
Star Wars.
Yeah. I mean, if we think about it, but the interesting thing is that in pop culture, we do like when aliens aren't involved, we like to make humans as grandiose as possible. But like you said, when aliens are involved, they're usually better, stronger. Like, for example, even if you look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or DC, sorry, not Marvel. I'm not too sure about Marvel, but in DC, the strongest superhero is an alien, Superman, right?
Okay,
He's
yeah,
from
yeah,
Krypton,
yeah.
and he's much stronger than humans. So we kind of like to grandify aliens. And I think that's because we as humans, we're still pretty confined to Earth and Earth orbit. Like, we've been to the moon, depending on if you think that's a hoax.
Yeah, so
Because that's like a pretty big conspiracy.
Major.
But I think we've been to the moon.
Yeah, same.
And we've put probes on Mars. We've sent some probes to the outer solar system. But we're still really a planetary species within Earth, right? We can't really survive outside Earth. Whereas aliens, we always picture them roaming the galaxy.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty cool aspect. But I don't know if such aliens exist, especially not in the Milky Way. We could go into, I guess, why aliens might not exist in the Milky Way, or why at least aliens with a much superior intelligence than ours don't exist within the Milky Way.
I mean, could it be that they would have already found out about us?
I think so.
Right? Because if we're assuming that they're more advanced, either they would have, seen us and, okay, let's not waste our time. We're not even worth their effort. Or they could have just destroyed us by now.
Yeah. So
Could be.
if we assume that there are aliens that are superior, vastly superior to us, roaming the Milky Way, then we have pretty powerful telescopes that can visualize our galaxy pretty well. And they probably have even better ones. So we haven't detected anything that gives us any inkling of the possibility of there being like a galactic, type of super being.
Yeah, roaming the galaxies, the space highway kind of thing. And
what about, that brings me to a point called the Great Filter. Have you heard about the Great Filter?
Briefly, but tell me about it.
Yeah, so the Great Filter is a theory. It's like a hypothesis that says somewhere along the stages of the development of life on a specific planet, there is a catastrophe that causes the extinction of the intelligent species.
Okay.
So it goes from, microbial to slightly intelligent levels. There are 8 or 9 levels. Human level, which is, they say, level 8. And then level 9 is galactic. Like we've learned how to roam space and farm resources from planets and stars, different planets and stars. So we're right now on level 8. And looking around our galaxy, we haven't seen anything that gives us any indication that any other living species is at level 8 other than humanity, at least within the Milky Way, nearby planets and planetary systems. So maybe the reason that there isn't a level 9 that's observable is because somewhere along the road, a catastrophe happens where we bring about our own demise as a species.
Okay.
And some people speculate that this great filter is AI.
Okay.
Other people speculate, and again, this is very theoretical. We're diving into the very theoretical. Other people speculate that there is a very powerful alien species that we can't detect, that if they detect any other species or civilization, go past level 8, they eviscerate them because they want to be the dominant species in the universe.
Yeah.
So that's another theory. But the second one is actually pretty cool if you think about it.
Okay.
So they're just waiting in the wings. So they're like observing us from a distance. Like, okay, these guys seem to be evolving. They can't detect us yet because they don't know how to. But if they get to a point where we might be detected, we're going to need to kill them because they might become a threat to us.
Them. Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes sense.
So that's what the Great Filter is. Like, there's something between the evolution of life where there's a reason why the species get extinct at that point. So that's one theory. There's other theories like we might be alone in the universe because it's insanely improbable for intelligent life to develop. But we don't really have the numbers. We can't really tell yet. You know what I mean? It's a bit difficult to understand what the probabilities are. But yeah, that's what the Great Filter is.
Man, okay, in terms of the probabilities, right? Because a lot of what determines whether there is life is down to these probabilities, at least in our observable, right? Because there's a term for that, observable universe and so on.
Yeah.
Have they come up with some sort of equation that says that at least from what we can see, we're the only ones? You know, Earth is the only one.
Yeah.
While there are habitable planets, right? And maybe we'll get into that and what qualifies. But have they seen other ones that are, you know, close relatively, obviously?
Yeah, we can talk about the Drake equation in a bit, which is basically an equation that is meant to identify the probability of other life within the galaxy, intelligent life within the galaxy and within the observable universe. But generally, like, astronomers have been looking to the stars for a while now.
Okay.
And we have noticed planetary systems and planets that seem to be in a zone around their star that is habitable and supports the water, like
formation of water.
Formation of water. Because in theory, the way we understand life, which is very little, by the way, it has to originate with water available.
Yeah, there needs to be water on the planet. I like this one, the habitable zone, or is also known as the Goldilocks zone.
Or the Goldilocks zone, yeah.
Obviously, it's a metaphor from the story of, you know, Goldilocks.
Yeah.
Around hot and cold. She tries 3 different porridges, I think.
Yeah.
And the way it applies to planetary is that if it's too hot, water obviously, you know, evaporates. If it's too cold, water freezes.
Yeah.
Just right is, you know, the middle, and that's where our Earth is. And that determines, and they have I think they have like a catalog of planets that they keep updating that are in that habitable zone.
They do.
And then they start to zoom in a bit more and look for what they call biosignatures, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the one. It's an interesting one.
It's really, really interesting. And the thing that irks me a little bit about this is, okay, we definitely need to look based on what we know, in the sense that we know that life originated on Earth, and we strongly suspect water is the reason. That's how it originated, in water. Then we're looking for other planets with the same sort of water. But if you look at where life survives on Earth, there are, like, for example, around hot water springs or like geysers that are in the sea, where the temperature could reach 400, 500 degrees, you still have certain microbes and bacteria that are able to survive these environments, which means that I don't know if life needs to evolve from a very simple, you know, it has to be within the water zone, or if there are other ways that life can emerge, that it doesn't necessarily have to be with liquid water. Maybe there's some other liquid that life can actually originate from somehow.
I mean, it could be, again, part of this like emergent property that we don't know how life. We know that, you know, water is important, but how does it sort of transition? Because even our planet, right, for millions of years, didn't support life.
For I think 750 million years.
Early on, right?
Early on Earth, there was no life. The theory is that I think it was about 4 billion or 3.8 billion years ago, microbes appeared on Earth. And then it was microbes for billions of years. And then several hundred millions years ago, more complex life forms started emerging.
Yeah, it's just cooking.
Yeah, it was cooking for billions of years, which is another reason why people think that, because we assume now that the universe is, I think, 14 billion years old or something like that. And then the planetary systems need to form and all of that jazz. Maybe that's why we don't really have super advanced civilization, is because really the universe is just not that old. It's not old enough to support super advanced civilizations that roam galaxies. Because if it took 4 billion years on Earth for complex life to emerge, then it probably takes a similar amount of time elsewhere, right? For it to cook. And then maybe somewhere along these 4 billion years, if we think back to the Great Filter, maybe the filter is before we reach humanity. Maybe there's a high likelihood that life gets extinct way before it emerges into complex life forms like humans. But the Earth was super lucky in a sense where we passed that filter. And we're one of the few, if not the only planets that passed that specific filter to the point where we actually reached humanity. This is a bit of a boring one because it means that humans are likely the only intelligent species in the galaxy and maybe the universe. But it could be, right? Like we don't know. We don't know for sure.
Yeah, just a roll of the dice and it just happened to land on what we needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another interesting theory is life got introduced from extraterrestrial activity.
Yeah.
Like it didn't originate on Earth.
Yeah.
It was sent on an asteroid. Either sent on an asteroid or happened to be on some asteroid that hit Earth a few billion years ago.
Yeah, well, this is kind of consistent with the Superman one as well, right? Is that
Yeah.
his parents or his species got annihilated, and then he was sort of the last one, and he came in and arrived at Earth.
Like the way, I mean,
Could be.
It could be for sure. And I think we're getting close as a species to be able to develop like stem cells or specific cellular organisms and microbes that eventually evolve to this complex life form that we are and send them to planets in habitable zones.
Okay.
Like we just put them on a trajectory to exit the solar system, whatever it needs to exit, and go to a star system where there are planets light years away, where there are planets that support life. And boom, crash them into the planet, and then you have some life form there. And maybe if we send out 10,000 of these to 10,000 planets, 1 or 2 or 3 actually end up supporting life. So maybe if we reverse engineer that, maybe that's something some sort of alien civilization did and sent life to Earth in that sense. Like how are we going to know?
Yeah, we can't. Yeah, it's...
Yeah.
What's the one around the probabilities? So is this the Drake equation?
The Drake equation, it talks about like specific probabilities. So there is, if we look at the Drake equation, it's basically... we want to understand what's the possibility of having a specific number of intelligent life species within the Milky Way.
Okay.
And the way it goes is that number, the number of intelligent species in the Milky Way, would be equal to a bunch of stuff that's multiplied by each other. One of them is the rate of star formation. So how many stars form in our galaxy per year? Well, astronomers believe that is between 1.5 and 3 stars per year are formed in the Milky Way.
Okay.
So that's the rate of star formation. What is the fraction of those stars that actually have planets? So the way we do that is we that's another part of the equation. We look for different stars and see if there are planets orbiting them.
Okay.
And there's a really, really cool methods that we do that. Like, do you know any of the methods of how we figure out whether stars have planets?
Yes, and actually there's one that caught my eye. It's called the transit method. Transit method is, and just to kind of step back a little bit, I think what we rely on to determine what's out there is everything comes back to light. So it's kind of like a first principles view, is that where light comes or where we can observe light, that dictates all the other the assumptions and the formulas that we need. And the example in this case is where there is a star that we can observe through telescopes, for example, we can't observe the planets around it. So what we can measure is, let's say we track the light of a certain star on a graph, and it's consistent. Let's say it's horizontal. What scientists have noticed is that there's a dip in that light, even very fractional or marginal. That dip may be a planet blocking that light. And so from that, they're able to derive so many things, like if that dip occurs again, that's the frequency of how much it orbits, right? If the dip is larger, then the planet is also larger, and so on. So it's really interesting how just light and how we observe light can determine whether there are planets around the star, and then they'll start to categorize whether it's a habitable zone or not, and so on.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
And just from this light, I would say like difference
or aberration,
or aberrations, they can also calculate the approximate distance of the planet from its star, the approximate size of the planet, and make these kinds of specific calculations, which is really, really, it's awesome.
It is.
And we sent, now we have the James Webb Space Telescope, which we sent up recently to space, and it's making these sort of calculations much more accurate because it's a much more powerful telescope.
Yeah.
The more powerful our telescopes become, the more easily we can calculate these light aberrations around star systems, and the further we can look to star systems that are even further away.
Yeah, exactly.
Because right now, I don't know how many but there's a specific amount of light years past we can look to understand what planetary systems are around the stars. But if we think of it, like there are so many stars that we can't even see. Like there's no way for us to study.
No, absolutely. And I think I was looking at the number, at least they have a catalog, we were saying earlier, of certain planets that they think are in habitable zone. I think it's about like 10,000 now.
Yeah.
So, and they're all like, I'm sure you've seen the names like X123.
Yeah, or Kepler or...
something like that. Now, what I also found interesting is that when they do look within the habitable zone, they're not always looking for oxygen. So it's not the primary, what they call biosignature, that determines whether life can form. Sometimes they're looking for methane.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not entirely just about oxygen, because a methane tells you that life form, what is it? Like the output is methane, obviously. So that's an interesting one. It's not about just oxygen. There's other, I think there's ammonia as well. Phosphine or phosphate, I think. So all these different ones, and it's amazing. I think it's astrobiology in a way. That's
like if we think about it, and we'll get back to the Drake equation, but if we think about it, like, for example, plants, I know they take in oxygen at night, but during the day they take in carbon dioxide. So there are, sure, we assume that oxygen is necessary, but maybe it isn't. Maybe there are alien species that can breathe in nitrogen and then they excrete ammonia or something.
Yeah, it's an assumption. It's a huge assumption on our part.
Yeah.
Because it's an earthly assumption. Ultimately.
Definitely. So we're very limited by how we perceive life.
Yeah.
And anyway, I can continue.
And biased, ultimately.
We're very biased because we only have one frame of reference.
Absolutely.
And it's life, how it originated on Earth and how it evolved on Earth. But who knows what could happen outside? We have the average rate of star formation, the fraction of the stars that have planets revolving around them, which is close to 1, by the way. Almost all stars, not quite all of them, but almost all stars we're observing seem to have planets rotating around them.
Okay.
N, which is the average number of planets that can support life per star. So how many planets per star are supportive of life, are in that Goldilocks zone that we talked about.
Okay.
And then we move into specific fractions. How many fractions of these planets could support, could actually develop life? So from the planets that support life, how many of them actually develop life? And then from the fractions of the planet that develop life, how many of them develop intelligent life versus microbial life?
Okay, so I'm sure there's some sort of like funnel that with each
it's all a funnel.
Question, it just
every fraction gets
down.
smaller.
Yeah.
And then the next fraction is what fraction of this intelligent civilization would develop communications that are detectable outside of that civilization. And then the last one is for what length of time would that civilization that is detectable outside exist for? So how long is like the human existence time span gonna last? So there are a couple of things around each one of these variables. So for example, the fraction of planets that could support or develop life, so initially it was thought that every star system that supports planets will have an Earth-like planet around it. But right now, the ratio is closer to 0.4. So about 40% of star systems in the Milky Way that we've observed seem to have a planet that's in the Goldilocks zone.
Okay.
So
there's an equation, not to interrupt, but it seems like per like solar system, there's some equation dictated by gravity, right? Gravitational pull. And the existence of the habitable zone that is maybe like consistent, that is like copy pasted across the galaxy, perhaps.
So there are rules that
they
they seem to these physics rules, the cosmological rules that whatever governs and forms things, gravity is a huge part of it. They seem to follow certain patterns. And one of these patterns is having a planet that's whatever distance from a star that deems it habitable per se.
Okay.
So from these habitable planets, how many of these planets will develop life, right? Like, so we're trying to think about, if you're in a planet that's in the habitable zone, how likely is it that life will develop there? There are arguments of that being closer to 1, so 100% of planets in the habitable zone end up at some point developing life. Obviously, this number is very hard to calculate. Like, we can't, this is all assumptions and hypotheticals. Yeah. But the thought is, because after the origin of water, on a cosmological scale, the time it took for life to develop on Earth, assuming it started on Earth and wasn't extraterrestrial, it was actually pretty quick for all intents and purposes on a cosmological scale.
Relatively.
The smallest life forms. So they assume it to be 1. If there's a planet that's Earth-like with water on it, most likely microbial life is going to exist. The next one becomes more interesting. What fraction of life becomes intelligent life? Yeah. And in the initial calculations of the Drake equation, people also put 100% here because they thought that inevitably life is going to become intelligent life at some point. But there are propositions by astronomers now that make it more like 0.02%. So there's a very, very, very low chance that microbial life becomes intelligent life. And this is the great filter, right? So somewhere in the process of being microbial, something has to really trigger this evolution into intelligent life and not eradicate any life forms that's beyond microbial. And this is where the biggest variance is in the equation. There are people that think, no, intelligent life is inevitable, and there are other schools of thought that say, no, microbial life is inevitable, intelligent life is exceedingly rare.
Wow.
So we don't really know. Yeah. And one of the reasons why it's so low is because of something called the Fermi Paradox. Have you heard of the Fermi Paradox?
Yeah, that's the one that I think the Italian gentleman who spoke about, if there was intelligent life, we would have found out by now, ultimately, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So if intelligent life exists, then most likely intelligent life, much more intelligent than humans, exist. And if that exists, where is it?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
If there's a spacefaring civilization, we have seen no signs of it anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
A bit of a depressing thought because, I really like the thought of aliens, but so the proposed fraction there is much lower. And then you have what fraction of these will be able to communicate or like want to communicate, and that's estimated to be around 20%. Again, very arbitrary number.
Yeah, of course.
You can't really.
Yeah, these numbers, it's a flip in a way, and your assumptions are put to bed.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah,
right? Because so much has to follow and caveat. So
there's so many caveats within every single element of this equation, and so many assumptions that can cause numbers to vary wildly, depending on what your belief system is. What kind of theory do you feel most attuned to? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And the scale of it, right? Because one small change changes, drastically.
Exactly.
Astronomically, literally astronomically.
Astronomically, exactly.
Right? Because that's where we get the word from, right? Astronomical unit is the unit of...
on a cosmological scale, which is something really we as humans find it really hard to fathom.
It's not intuitive, right? Even light year. Do you know about how light year is confused as well?
As in, it's a measure of time?
Yeah. When it's a measure of distance.
It's a measure of distance,
So it's the amount, the distance light travels in 1 year.
Exactly.
And I think it's like maybe 10 trillion kilometers.
It's a huge number,
right?
Something we can't fathom.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, like light, to us, to the human eye, we don't see light even traveling. Yeah. Light is instantaneous to us. Yeah. Turn a light on, it's instant. Like it shines. But I think the light from the sun takes 8 minutes to reach Earth. I think it's 8 minutes.
Light minutes?
No, it takes 8 minutes from light from the sun to reach Earth.
Okay.
So Earth is 8 light minutes away from the sun.
That's what. Yeah, I saw that 8 light minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, I mean, it's pretty cool that when you look at the sun, you're actually looking at it 8 minutes ago, not what it is in the present moment.
And I like how you kind of like, you can use the other term of light. So it's only 8 light minutes.
Yeah, it's just light minutes. 8 light minutes. Yeah. But there's also theories of life existing, alien life existing even on stars. You know, like there is a possibility that there are alien, some sort of formations within stars that cause life to emerge. So there's all kinds of outlandish theories about life and how it comes to be. But ultimately, from our observations, at least for us to see like any human-like species that would build at least things that we can fathom, we haven't really seen it out there. You know? So in terms of the Drake equation, the variance is extremely high, and it goes from having thousands of intelligent civilizations within the Milky Way to having one, which is humanity. And the probability of having more than one is extremely low. Technically, the result of this equation is like a probability. What's the probability of having X number of civilizations? Thousands? Highly unlikely, because we would have detected them. We have enough technology now to detect similar civilizations with similar levels of advancement as humanity. We really haven't, at least not in our radius of observation, like how far away we can look. Again, I'm not sure what that radius is today. We can look pretty far into the galaxy, not far enough, obviously. A lot of parts of the Milky Way even are completely unobservable to us. But we can look far enough. And we haven't noticed anything. And if there are thousands, then we probably would have seen something, right?
Isn't there also kind of like the view that because the universe is expanding, is that maybe they're expanding in a different direction, and they're in an area that in an infinite, lifetime, we may never come in contact. The light from them will never reach us.
That's a really good point.
Right?
Because the further you get from the Milky Way, and I'm not going to get into the physics of it, but the further that you get from the Milky Way, the faster the galaxies are traveling away from the Milky Way. So if there is life on other galaxies, and we can't, so there's theories, and that comes up in science fiction, where aliens or humans eventually can bend the fabric of space-time and sort of travel from point A to point B through a shortcut. So if we on the Milky Way want to get to the Andromeda galaxy, which is, I think, one of the closest galaxies, if not the closest to the Milky Way, we can bend space-time and get from the Milky Way to Andromeda pretty much instantly through like a wormhole. Right? Or through like hyper faster than light travel, some sort of teleportation. Again, whether or not this is possible, we don't really know. In theory, the Einstein-Rosen bridge, which is a wormhole, theoretically can exist in space-time, but we don't understand space-time enough to say for sure whether this is something that would even be stable enough for us to travel through. So the fact that they're moving further away from the Milky Way, there reaches a point where the galaxies are moving further away from us than the speed of light even. So like you said, no possibility of us ever seeing them, given the constraints that we're living with today.
It's crazy. It really is. And it's not something intuitive at all. You can't fathom the scale of what we're talking about and the size of it.
Oh yeah, it's insane. Like if you think about the size of the universe, 50 billion galaxies within the observable universe, which means that there are probably 100 quintillion Earth-like planets out there.
My God. Okay.
In the observable universe. That's just the universe within our light radius.
Yeah, where light has reached us. Yeah, and we don't know how much of the unobservable and what its scale is in size. So,
which is like, it's nuts. So if you think about it, maybe not on the Milky Way, but maybe every galaxy has like an Earth-like civilization and humanity. And because we're never gonna we don't have any observational systems at all that would detect anything from a different galaxy, like a life form. We can detect the really dense stars, quasars, black holes, stuff like that from different galaxies. But we can't really detect radio waves coming from a civilization and try to infer whether or not life exists.
And we're sending, aren't we? I mean, that's what...
Yeah, we're trying to send communications out there, but even those have they decay.
Okay.
So ultimately they become noise that you can't really separate from the cosmological background radiation.
Okay.
Right? So it works at a specific distance, and then it doesn't work anymore.
It stops. Okay. It's just interesting that when you think about it, if something does land, some communication, what are we going to get the communication return? What's the you're picking up a phone, you're calling a number. Who's going to answer?
Anyway, how do we even know what we're looking for?
Yeah, exactly.
right? Like what kind of signal is it? So the way they're doing it is they're looking at aberrations in the standard signals that these big satellites receive.
Okay.
You know, like there's SETI that's looking for that, and there are others that have satellites that try to detect extraterrestrial communications. But yeah, we detect aberrations, obviously, and then we study them, but nothing has ever pointed towards it being an extraterrestrial life signal. However, do we really know? Like, how are we going to parse it? You know what I mean? It's also very difficult to understand how to parse alien life because we can't fathom what it could be. Like in pop culture, we see little green men. You know, we see insect-style aliens.
Yeah.
But are they going to be like that? Like, do we have any idea what an alien would look like?
No, not at all. I mean, the only thing we have is just the extent of human creativity to visualize what they could be.
Exactly.
And I tend to think that now, like after this discussion, is that if there does exist another life form and they reach out to us, they have to be much more technologically advanced.
They have to be.
I think so, because then they'll understand that we can only communicate English, Arabic, whatever, you know, these languages. And if they want to talk to us and not, kill us or annihilate us, they'll find a way to communicate.
They would.
You know,
and I think it'll be easy for them.
Yeah, right, because they must be that advanced.
They're advanced
So
enough.
I'm sure there's some assumption that, you know, the chain of thinking to be able to go like, okay, if they are advanced and they've realized, okay, guys, you know, we've annihilated others, we're coming to you guys in peace. You know, they might just come with a white flag. We go like, okay, you know what we do, you know?
But do you think all countries would be accepting of like aliens reaching out to us? Wouldn't some countries get fearful and want to try to... I mean, it would be very, very stupid if we try something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you came from a different solar system, maybe different galaxy. We're not going to try to bomb you.
Yeah.
Sure, come have a cup of coffee.
Exactly.
Right? Like
and they're so advanced, and then they go like, coffee? Huh?
Yeah, what's coffee? You know? But so it's interesting because there have been sightings of UFOs and UAPs on Earth, right? UAPs.
It's called UAPs now?
Well, so UAPs are unidentified aerial phenomena. It's just this different sort of wording for UFOs.
Sounds smarter now.
Yeah, it sounds smarter, but it's the same thing technically. So there have been sightings, like there's the Roswell sighting, which I believe was in Nevada. And that was one of the earliest ones that raised a big stir, went through headlines, like there was a UFO sighting and stuff, and it was close to Area 51. And then there was all the legends around Area 51 and how they're keeping alien technology there and they're studying it and all of that. And it's just like if you think about it, right? If aliens were advanced enough to reach Earth, and we kind of... we're more advanced to the point where we abducted them and kept them in our lab and are studying them? Like, really?
Yeah.
Well, if they have managed to reach us, we trapped them and are and we're the ones studying them? It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that easily. Yeah.
And there's a lot. So recently, Area 51 and the U.S. intelligence agency and stuff, they declassified all this information that they have, because a lot of the reason that there were legends around Area 51 was because it was super classified and you couldn't go near it. So people naturally assume if we can't go near it, then it must be something crazy. So maybe aliens.
Yeah.
But really, the truth of it is they're just making a lot of highly secretive experiments and stuff like that, right? So it's really interesting, but there are, sightings that really we haven't explained, and they've been proven to be legit sightings of specific things and aberrations that we still identify as a UAP, which is an unidentified aerial phenomena. Even like government agencies say, we don't know what this is.
Okay.
And there's a really cool one a couple of years ago, actually, someone that was flying a jet, like an army officer or something, someone in the army, flying a jet that saw, and they had like a camera and stuff, and there was like a metallic, really weird aberration that just flew past him on the camera. And video experts identified that it wasn't tampering with the video, it wasn't a camera error, and then they took it to other experts who studied it, and they couldn't identify what that metallic object that flew past was. So there are incidents like this that make people believe that maybe aliens are spying on us without us really knowing about it yet. They're waiting for something. And there's a huge conspiracy around the fact that we're being observed by aliens. We just don't know it yet. Which,
yeah, it's interesting. It's
Yeah.
really, really fascinating. And again, this is partly due to pop culture, is that we've kind of been fed that in a way that if something does happen, I think we'll all just believe it. Because of all the movies and shows and, the idea of being abducted, right? There's a lot of shows around that. People have been taken by aliens, they've been experimented on and then came back with...
Yeah.
with
not just shows, there are conspiracy theories that the government suppresses information about alien abductions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like they have information that people have been abducted by aliens, but they don't want to release it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's just a joke by the government as well, just to keep people, busy and thinking about these conspiracies.
Because it
and
stops
they're just
them from
laughing.
thinking about...
they're just like, these guys believe this shit. You know what I mean? It's just us, just messing with you.
Yeah, and not just that, it stops them from getting interested in the real bullshit that governments are up to.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't you think about aliens and let us do our thing?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be.
Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, especially the governments like United States and then these what they're doing.
Yeah. They could definitely brainwash their people or feed them bits of information to keep them interested in something so that they turn a blind eye towards what's really important. But ultimately, aliens and extraterrestrial life is it's such an interesting thing to think about, which is why so much material exists out there about them.
Yeah. The thing is, we didn't touch on this too much, but even like past cultures and societies, there are images or like carvings to show them being visited by, extraterrestrials.
Can you talk more about that?
So I've seen a number of like, kind of like the hieroglyphics, where you see like a drawing and then you see like some like saucer.
Okay.
And people are like, oh my God, look, they visited the Mayans or the Aztecs. And of course, there's the theory that the pyramids were built by aliens.
Yeah.
Which I was reading about this. Elon Musk tweeted about this, that, oh yeah, of course, the pyramids were built by aliens. And then Egypt responded and saying, dude, no, it's our civilization. And people have gone to the point where they're saying like it's actually racist to say that aliens have built it because you're dismissing the advancement of that civilization thousands of years ago.
True.
So yeah. So it's a funny one. It's a bit of a rabbit hole. There's a book by a gentleman, I think in the late 90s, where he spoke about the pyramids, not an alien, technology or built by aliens, but it's an energy plant, some form of energy. So it's either used to project energy or absorb energy.
Okay, but humans built it.
But humans built it, yes. And he detailed some of the engineering around it. So it's, my colleague was telling me about this like a few days ago. So
yeah. The pyramids are fascinating.
They are.
Like you can understand why it's such an ancient structure and it's really awesome in the way that it was built. And we try to fathom how humans back then could build it.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, like a pyramid is actually not difficult to build and it's also the most stable physical form there is. And all you have to do is just lay bricks out in a square and then just start putting bricks on top of it and climbing that square, and you keep putting more and more bricks. I mean, I say only, but if you think back then in the ancient Egyptian civilization, obviously there was slavery. So all the people had like a bunch of people carrying these bricks and laying them around and stuff. Yeah,
in the words of like Louis C.K., I think he was saying that they just threw human suffering at it until it was done. So they found the way, the most inhumane way, and they did it with some pulley system, with ramps, there's a theory around like water, like the water back then the Nile flowed differently. Yeah. So they, some flotation helped.
There was definitely like some ingenious engineering happening there. Yeah. But I mean, they were humans, and humans are intelligent. Like, look what we've built now. Yeah. Look at the Burj Khalifa. Look at all the crazy stuff, the satellites that we have orbiting. And
yeah, I think it's a case of us. And I think people more and more nowadays are coming to terms with this and appreciating history. That people, just because they didn't have internet or what we call technology, right? And technology means so many things.
Yeah.
Because technology, people classify the wheel as technology.
It is.
Like the pulley system. There were motors invented by the Greeks.
Yeah.
That I didn't know of like till recently. So we kind of look back at society as primitive. right, and not advanced.
Exactly.
Just because it's
we think they're like animals.
Yeah.
But actually,
exactly.
no, they were still humans.
Yeah, and I think more and more nowadays, people, their appreciation of history is growing.
Yeah.
So they're kind of seeing that people, they had technology, they had knowledge, but it wasn't codified.
Correct.
It was more heuristics. It was more
Exactly.
like learning by doing and repeating and observing.
Yeah, which is why I really doubt that aliens built the pyramids or anything on Earth, really.
Yeah.
Now, could it be possible that some sort of alien technology or spacecraft or something crashed into Earth that they sent as a probe?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, true.
Right? And maybe that is something some government somewhere is hiding. And actually, there's an institute called To the Stars.
Okay.
And it's formed by the lead singer of Blink-182, which is a band.
Okay.
A band that was famous, I think, in the 90s. And he formed like a To the Stars foundation because he strongly believes in and he's very passionate about aliens and the existence of aliens. And they actually partnered with the US government on studying specific types of technologies that are called metamaterials.
Metamaterials, okay. Yeah, what are those?
So metamaterials are types of materials or metals that have very weird properties.
Okay.
That are properties that we don't see existing in the standard metals and materials around us. Some of these properties could be like they absorb radio waves, or they absorb light waves, or they have specific elasticities and very like crazy wild properties or rigidity. So there are a bunch of metamaterials that have been discovered that, you know, the To the Stars Foundation, they believe that is like alien technology that somehow got to Earth.
Okay.
And is being covered up somehow. So there's investigations around that. Like they're trying to understand how that metamaterial came to be. And then the government is studying and building stuff from it. Now, what the government says, or at least what's been released, is that they don't know what the origin of some of the materials is. Like,
okay.
But they know how to, like, they study them and they realize how to replicate them from studying that material. But they don't worry about whether or not it's from aliens. Like, the government doesn't really worry about that. But institutes like To the Stars think that those kinds of technologies came to Earth from some sort of alien intervention somehow. Maybe an alien civilization sent some sort of probe, or maybe... before, like when Earth was still really young, they came, visited, and left, something like that.
Okay. And these elements, do they upset the chart of the elements, like, you know, chemistry point of view?
They're not specific elements; they're compounds or alloys, or right? They're materials.
Okay.
So they're not one element, but they're a very, very distinct combination or fabrication of elements that form this really exotic, interesting material that has very weird properties.
Okay. Yeah, I need to look into that, right? Because alloying is combining, isn't it?
Alloying is combining different metals, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So it's a material that could be a combination of a random number of elements in a specific formation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I need to look into it.
So,
or it could be like just by chance, right? Asteroid, you know, made sure these landed on Earth. Somehow.
Yeah, it could be.
There's some like, you know, random factor.
Yeah, it could be that it's completely random.
We don't know.
And, you know, the infinite probability theory, where in a world of infinity, the chances of something happening is infinite. Like there is 100%. And so this material forming, it just happened to form somehow.
Okay.
Right? Or it was developed by some lab somewhere and the government doesn't want to expose where they're doing this kind of research. You know what I mean? That's also possible.
Makes sense. Especially if it can be used in a different way, and then it gets into production and so on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
hush.
They like to keep things under wraps. But again, we can't really tell for sure. Maybe there are a couple of specific people that know for sure where specific origins of some of these materials came from.
Okay.
But there are these kind of theories that they're exotic and they're alien, from some other intelligent species out there.
It sounds like some like alchemy stuff in a sense, right? Because there's a whole history around that.
Yeah,
as well.
I'm not a big believer in alchemy, but
it's just one of those like, you know, like myths or
yeah,
popular myths.
Yeah,
I think historically. Very interesting.
So if you were to imagine, so if I say alien right now, what would you picture in your head?
It's hard not to pick or to picture what we've seen, right? Because I need to be almost in a void mentally to try and come up with something that is not influenced by my intention has been, what's been in my attention for years, right? Since childhood, cartoons. So it's very difficult to come up with something that is original.
So
right?
what is it? Like, what comes to mind when I say, like, think of an alien?
The main alien I would depict is like the Martian in, like Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
That one. That's the first thing that comes to mind, the alien. And then there's the balloon-shaped head.
Kind of like E.T. or...
No, there's the famous one, like the eyes are like this.
Oh, the eyes. So like Paul. Have you seen Paul? The movie with... voiced by Seth Rogen, the little alien.
One. Yeah.
He's got the balloon head, the green
in a way,
with the alien eyes.
Yeah, that's the most common one, I think.
I think that's like even like the emoji depiction of aliens is that like balloon head green.
Yeah, exactly on the phone. Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough.
To me, what's fascinating is when I think of aliens, I think really intelligent, advanced insect-like hive creatures.
Okay.
For some reason, that's what comes to mind.
Insect.
Yeah, even though I've like ingested a lot of pop culture type aliens, but what fascinates me the most is hive intelligence. So the intelligence of insects and hives, is it's not very well understood. But
bees, ants, and such.
Yeah, but there's a form of intelligence that's really cool. So if you extrapolate that and make the hive intelligence much more advanced. It becomes really, really interesting and fascinating to the point where they can build stuff and they can colonize stuff as a hive rather than as single beings with one particular intelligence.
Yeah.
So it's a bit more obscure. It's a type of intelligence we don't understand as well. So maybe it's some insect-like hyper intelligent hive-minded creatures. Where there's a central brain, but then the insects themselves, the creatures are like drones to that central brain. You know what I mean? Because that's how hives work.
The thing is, again, this is where my mind's going now, is that different gravity on a different planet might allow for these insect-like to grow to different sizes, right? Because on our planet, we are limited by gravity. That's why you can't have like an insanely huge... like Godzilla can't exist in a way.
They can't. I mean, dinosaurs did exist, right? And they were huge.
Yeah, but I mean, isn't there like there's some formula that tells you that after a certain point, the weight of any being will allow it to collapse. That's why the heaviest is a whale in the sea.
Yeah.
And otherwise it would have died out.
Yeah.
It can't consume
That's
enough.
Correct.
It can't consume enough, right? Because it will wipe out the ecosystem. And so maybe on a different planet with different laws of gravity, different means of surviving, maybe these insects can grow to different sizes. They can
even different environments.
Different environment. The emergent property, right? Isn't that what like ants and bees? One of the properties they see is something called emergence.
Correct.
So maybe that can develop on a scale beyond our comprehension.
100%.
And there we have it. And then we just have a huge bug arriving on our planet,
like massive machine gun cockroaches. Just like killing humans.
There's your script.
That's like a nightmare, dude.
That's a nice script. Yeah. Wait, isn't one of those like Starship movie? There's a movie around
Starship Troopers.
That's the one, right? It's insects ultimately.
Yeah.
So maybe.
And that's kind of where my mind goes to, because Starship Troopers is like one of those childhood movies.
Okay. So they beat us to it.
Yeah. No, and there are books that have similar hive mind intelligence. There's one by Orson Scott Card, one of the sequels to Ender's Game, I think, that is a book that I really, really like, that has this hive mind intelligence sort of creatures. But yeah, I mean, it could be anything. Yeah. Aliens could really have they could even be dark matter. Like, do you know what dark matter is?
Not very well, no.
So dark matter is, our understanding of gravity and stuff is limited in a sense where the way motions of planets and stars work aren't explained by the matter that we see in the galaxy. Okay. There's something that has mass that is causing gravity that we can't observe. Okay. And we call that dark matter because we can't see it. Like, it doesn't interact with light, but there's a clear gravitational pull from it. So it's a matter that's dark, right? Doesn't interact with light. We can't see it.
And that's all we know.
And that's all we know.
Yeah.
Literally, that is all we know.
Wow.
So maybe aliens exist in the dark, right? Like not in the visible spectrum.
It's like space curtain in a way. There's a huge curtain that we just know that there is a curtain, but we can't see beyond it.
Yeah. I mean, if you think a bit, you know, the wavelength that we actually see.
Yeah.
It's such a small part of the spectrum.
Okay.
You know, the electromagnetic spectrum, the wavelengths. And light, visible light, is just such a small part. Above it, you'll have like the X-rays and the gamma rays. And then below it, you have infrared down to radio waves.
Okay.
But that visible spectrum is so small.
Yeah.
We can detect the others. Sure, we have like instruments to detect them, but we can't observe them.
Okay.
So
the aliens are around us and we can't see them. There you go.
Yeah, and even dark matter. Like, what is dark matter? Like, does everything have to interact with light? Do we know? Yeah. Maybe, but yeah. Wow. So it's. I mean, we went pretty deep through different avenues. I think this is a place where we can like wrap up. Right?
Yeah, I mean, it does open up so many different topics, and I think we can maybe do more of a deep dive around the universe. Maybe some of the key terms that. Because these terms like the Fermi Paradox and so on, they're the main like kind of principles that guide all this thinking. So maybe we can do like a specific episode where we deep dive into each one of those, or like the top 10 of these principles.
Yeah.
And like where like what's come about in the past 10, 20 years, right? And some of the ones that we've like dismissed entirely because we've just evolved and it doesn't
make sense anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So very interesting, very fascinating.
Yeah, great episode, Sami.
Yeah, really good one, Tarek. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Tune in. Don't forget to subscribe, please, if you're new. And yeah, just stay with us and enjoy the journey.